Rated 1,000 or below, you may not know any of these top 5 endgame concepts. These concepts show up all the time in endgames. Knowing these endgame concepts will drastically improve your chess game. And if you're already an expert player, if your ELO is up north of 2,000, you may not know the bonus tip I'm about to give at the end of this video. Let's see what's up. So you have an outside pass pawn. Material's even, but you've heard that's good in the endgame, and I'll show you why right here. In the endgame, king activity is of most importance, so you're going to bring your king into the game. Black is thinking, okay, well, I got to keep an eye over on this pawn right here, but, if I could go win these pawns, my stuff can start marching up the board, get some really good stuff going on. He's thinking, okay, well, let me stay right in the middle. And as white, what do? You just say, well, let me start marching my pawn down the board. And wait, I'm just going to give up my pawn? Yeah, king activity. Now my white king, marches into the board. Black is completely distracted over outside of the position. And you could see the white king's just boxing out the black king. He's going to go pick up all of these pawns, and it's just going to be simple. He's going to be able to convert this to a win. King activity is paramount. It's going to keep showing up here, so keep an eye out for it. Turning off the eval bar, our next position, it's white to move. What's he going to do? Does he have enough to make it happen? Well, why don't I just, run my pawn up the board? I'm going to make a queen. I'm going to be able to win this game. I know you're able to win this game with a queen. But let's go back to the beginning. Why is that going to work? Well, white's only 1, 2, 3, 4 squares away from promotion versus black is, let me use a different color, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares away from stopping him. So, 4 versus 5, a little bit quicker. If it was a tie, black would get there right at the same time and be able to stop that pawn. Our next position here, we can see a similar looking position, but after we play it out, black's able to get there in time. So going out to the beginning, we've got, 1, 2, 3, 4 versus 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the same, but what is a faster way to try to figure out this? Like, are we always going to be counting the number of squares? Well, we're going to count the square of the pawn, and I'll show you how to do that right here. So what you do is, if white is trying to promote over here, you're going to take a diagonal all the way to the end row. You got to take the diagonal that's going to get you there. Obviously, if you go, over to the H file, not enough room to make that diagonal get all the way to the edge. Then you're going to draw off a square going through that diagonal. The rule is, if the black king can make it inside of the square, he's going to be able to stop the pawn. If he can't get into the square, he can't stop the pawn. So in this example right here, when white moves forward, this is the new square of the pawn, when you draw that right there, and black's able to make it just inside that square on his next move, so he's able to make it. The next move, this is the new square. It's a little bit smaller, but again, black's able to get there just in time. And let me show a more specific real-world example of that square and how it's going to show up in your games all the time. It's white to move and win this game. How is he going to be able to do that knowing the square of the pawn? Well, black is trying to queen over here. Right now, this is the square of black, and white's already in it. So, even if black does decide to move forward to this A2 square, this is going to be the new square. White's easily going to be able to get into that square, even if black has a move. So he's like, okay, cool. I'm good on my own squares. Well, what about my pawns? Black's next move, he's just going to pick up this pawn, and then my king's going to be over here defending this pawn, and then he's going to go pick up this pawn. That's not going to work for me. So why don't I, defend my own pawn, and I'm going to defend it this way. And it's like, okay, well, black will just, take my pawn, I guess, but it doesn't, he can't take the pawn. If he takes the pawn right here, then this pawn is too fast. And if this pawn moves forward, this is going to be the new square of the pawn. And if that black king is all the way up over here, he's not going to be able to get into that square. So now white's going to be able to win this game right here. And unfortunately, black's just got nothing else he could do. He could go and he could try to promote here, but we've already said white's able to get into the square. He's able to take that queen. And now black is, again, anytime he decides to take this, it's not going to work for him. So maybe he'll decide instead, well, I guess I'll just kind of shuffle back and forth, but white says, okay, well, shuffle as much as you want. I'm going to bring my king over into the game. I'm going to make a queen right here. 2 pawns versus 0. Nice try. We'll get to 1 pawn versus 0 here in just a little bit. Don't worry. This is a super common mistake that players make. I put the eval back on for this just so you can see how drastic it is. We have black has got 1, 2, 3, 4 pawns versus white's 3 pawns. That's obviously an advantage. We know that black here, we'll trade off maybe one of these pawns over here. We'll call it that pawn for that pawn. We'll have a 2 on 0. That's going to be great. And, this king can just kind of mess around and wait and, eventually, win this position. So white's kind of in a bit of a bad position, and it's going to be really, really hard to defend. He moves forward, king activity, that's going to be really important. And black here makes the most common misstep I see all the time, especially for beginner players. He plays b6. So what? He's just preparing, next move, he's going to play c5. We're going to have a trade here. We're going to, create our own passed pawn. And, the same thing. I mean, black's doing a great job defending over here. I mean, what's the big deal? I guess I don't really understand. Well, white here has one move to completely immobilize black's position and take over this game. Are you able to spot it and spot why? Well, he just jumps forward here on b5. And what does that do? Now, obviously, this pawn can't move forward. The pawn's in the way. But it also immobilizes both of these pawns. They can't move forward because of en passant. I know, it's a crazy rule. Look it up on whatever, on Instagram or what, I don't know. TikTok, I guess. I don't know. But you have to do it. And now this pawn stops all 3 of those pawns. And white has 2 pawns versus 1 pawn. That's good, by the way. And as this game would move forward, obviously if black does decide to move forward, white would just take. And we know from the square of the pawn, it's these 3 squares, black's 2 squares away, not close enough. That's not going to be good. And if instead of doing that, he decides, okay, cool, well, I'm going to bring my king a little bit closer. White says, okay, king activity. We know that's important. If the king keeps moving over there, white says, whoa, wait up a second. I have my own stuff to make, and I'm going to make a queen way faster than you're going to. And, if he says, well, I guess instead of going over that direction, I'll stay over this way. Well, now white says, okay, that's great. I'll just go over this way and pick off your other pawns. And unfortunately, like going back right here, it's not like you could run over and grab this. Again, because of the square of the pawn, you could never run backwards outside of this square right here. And so anyway, going back all the way to the beginning of this position, never allow your opponent to immobilize 3 of your pawns or even 2 of your pawns with only 1 of his pawns. It's going to give him a huge advantage, you a big disadvantage. And you could see right here, black probably played really, really hard to get to this position. It's not like I set this up right before this video. And you just throw it away after all that work. I hope you're enjoying this content. I look for ways to make the simplest way to improve chess the fastest as possible with easiest openings. What are the most simple concepts? Subscribe if you haven't already. I'd appreciate it. It'd be great. Okay, I mentioned 2 versus 0. That's always going to be a win. Pretty much always. Not quite always, but we're not getting into that. For this one right here, it's a 1 versus 0, and right now it's a tie. And you're like, okay, cool, like that's great, it's a tie, but what's the way to do it? Well, the way to do it is to gain opposition. So right here, black is moving right in front of white. So opposition is when, this king is attacking these 3 squares to move forward. Black is saying, I'm opposing you on those same 3 squares. So whoever has the opposition, it's your opponent's move. So right now, they're looking right out from each other. And if they're looking right across from each other, whoever move it is has the disadvantage. So right now, it's white's move. White is not going to be able to win this game. Simple as that. And let me show you why. So white has to do something. Let's say he moves back. Black moves forward. And in this position right here, when black can't move any more forward, you want to stay behind the pawn. You just move straight back. So you wouldn't want to, move over here, allow this king to move forward. You're going to move straight back, and now when, white moves forward, okay, I regain the opposition because I move straight back, so no matter which way white moves, I'm able to get right in front of him. If he moves his pawn forward, I'm just going to move right in front of the pawn here, and what do you do? Okay, I can't move forward. I'm going to move straight back. No matter which way white moves, I'm going to move right in front of him. If he, steps back and tries to mess around with me, I'll just go back. Again, straight back. And we could see that, he's just going to do this shuffling game, staying in front of the pawn. Anytime he's not able to, either take the pawn, of course, or move forward, he just goes straight back. And after, shuffling around for a little bit, white here either has to give up his pawn, in which case it's a stalemate, or move here, and it's a stalemate because black can't move at all. And so going back all the way to the beginning here, that opposition is totally critical. So let's just say that instead of f3 and gaining that opposition right away, so we know f5 is to gain the opposition. If black does decide to move there, our bars stay, right in the middle. We got our opposition. That's all great. If instead of that, he says, let me just, I'll mess around for one move. Completely lost game. One miss move, and we're just in a world of hurt. Why? Because now white has the opposition. So white moves forward here. And again, these kings are right across, staring right at each other, and it is black to move, so black is at a disadvantage here. He's, okay, well, let me stay in front of the pawn. White says, well, I'm going to stay in front of the pawn. You're like, okay, well, are we just going to shuffle back and forth all day? Well, not quite, because now when black moves back, white says, oh, I'm going to move up the board. Black says here, okay, I'm going to gain the opposition yet again here. Oh, I'm going to move up the board. You can see white making all sorts of progress right here, and now, after I get a little bit here, go here, get the opposition yet again, and I'm going to shuffle yet again. And now I've got 1, 2, 3 squares to make all the way to promotion. Understanding this whole idea of opposition, understanding how to draw as black, or if your opponent messes up, to win as white with only one pawn, this is super critical. I know it's boring, but it's really critical. So yeah, figure it out, Thanks. One more thing really quick about opposition. It's white to move. It's his move, so you'd think that's his disadvantage, but he could just play h4, and now it's black to move. So anytime where your king is 2 spaces in front of your pawn like this, you can give yourself the opposition whenever you want to. So, getting your king as far in front of your pawn is going to be helpful. In this particular case, though, we're going into our next thing of tricky rook pawns. Rook pawns suck for the endgame, so look out for them, because you would think, okay, white has the opposition, black's gonna, he's gonna continue to move right over here, and, great, I've got it, but wait, usually when the king moves over, you move to this square that's not on the board. You move over to you move over to I6 is where you want to move your king, but there is no I6, and so the best you have right here is, I could just shuffle back and forth forever, or eventually I could start moving my pawn. Okay, cool. I'm going to start moving my pawn. Well, all black does is just stays in the corner, just moves back and forth, and there's nothing you could do. Eventually, if you check him here, we're in a stalemate situation. And the rook pawn tricks don't stop with just only a pawn. In this position right here, black is up a queen to a pawn. You would think that would be enough to win, and in most cases it is. Doesn't work for a rook pawn. Also doesn't work for these f or c pawns, but we're not getting to that. If white moves forward to h7, well, what does black do? Well, I can't allow white to make a queen right here, so I gotta stop that. I'm gonna have some checks. Okay, no, keep checking, not sure what to do. Right here would be really funny if white moved right here to the corner, then this is checkmate. So, white's better than that. And right over here, you'd think, okay, well, I got to bring my king a little bit closer to make this happen. But because of the configuration here, white doesn't have any moves. The queen is blocking this off. And so, the queen can't allow this. And now the king just moves right over. I'm threatening yet again to make a queen. The queen can't allow that. And black is not able to make any progress right here. And white's able to secure a draw with only a pawn against a queen. Now, if you thought I was done talking about rook pawns, really, the whole synopsis of this is going to be careful of rook pawns. If you're trying to defend, you want to defend against a rook pawn, it's going to be a whole lot easier for you. And this is no exception. In this position right here, white has a bishop and a pawn, and believe it or not, he's not able to win this game. And you're like, well, what are you talking about? You get up a whole piece and he's up a whole pawn. And at least in the other position, the other guy had a pawn, but it doesn't matter. All black does is just shuffles back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And no matter what happens, he's not able to make any progress. Right here, he's just going to shuffle back and forth between these two squares. And let's just say right here, white wants to get a little bit closer. If he moves here or here or here, that's stalemate because the king's got nowhere to go. The pawn covers this square, and if the king gets any closer, he would cover that square. It's a stalemate. And so, okay, well, we keep shuffling back and forth. Okay, let me try a new angle. Well, it doesn't make any difference if the king moves here or here or here. Again, it's yet again stalemate, and there's just nothing to be done. These rook pawns are ridiculous, but there is a slight amount of hope, which I'll show you right now. Now, you might be thinking, hey, I just saw this position. You just showed it to me. Well, that's not quite true, because this bishop was right here instead. Big look, we're going to have the same thing. The king's going to dance back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and there's nothing going to be able to be done. But that's not true. The thing to bear in mind with these bishop endgames versus a rook pawn type deal is what color is the bishop. Right now, this pawn is trying to promote on a dark square. You want your bishop to be also a dark square that can help the pawn promote. In this case, black is totally helpless, not able to do anything. White's just going to, march up forward, and no matter what black does, we're eventually going to secure that queening square. And then, right here, I'll just waste a move. Okay, cool. Well, get out of here. Nice. And now black is not even able to defend at all. He's got to run away from the queening square. GG's to black. Okay, for all you amazing people who made it to the bonus content here at the end, this is an endgame study by the great Reti, and it is white to play and white to draw this position. Okay, well, we talked about square the pawn. White is going this way, and, let's just draw it this way. This is white's square. Black is inside of it. That's going to be a little bit difficult. And now let's draw black's square. Okay, this is black's square. Okay. White's not going to be able to get inside of that square. So white to play, white to draw. Let's see what's up. So white, obviously we know you go here, and, let's make the actual queen. That's not going to work. Black's clearly winning. So out of desperation, let's try something a little bit different. We're going to move our king forward. The thing about king moves, you could move your king here or here. Pick the more active square. Let's see what happens. The game progresses forward. Black obviously, I'm going to move my pawn forward. The king's moving forward. It's getting closer to the square of the pawn. The square of the pawn is here, so there is no difference between this square and this square. So pick the more active square, get closer to your own pawn. And I hope you're seeing what's happening right here is when this happens, the king bails out. Now the clear purpose is shown. This king is escorting his own pawn forward. If we go h2, it's, we're going to queen at the same time. This is going to be a draw. Or, right here, if the king decides, well, let me try to save this game, it's the king's too close, and we will still yet again queen at the same time. GG's, and congrats on the amazing save. King safety, king activity. Your king can be an offensive and a defensive piece at the same time. Understanding these 5 simple endgame concepts will gain you ELO well beyond 1,000. I hope you enjoyed it. Give me a thumbs up if you have. I'll see you around here next time. Have a great night.